Millbridge wasn't the kind of town that liked change, let alone spiral-shaped houses or bearded veterans who kept to themselves. So when Cole Travers showed up in a weathered truck with out-of-state plates and a scar running down the side of his jaw, eyebrows raised. When he let his Belgian Malinois, Nova, out of the passenger seat, and she walked like she still had orders to follow, the laughter started. "That thing looks like a beehive someone forgot to finish," muttered the mailman on Main Street. "They say that house hears ghosts?" said a woman at the diner, pouring coffee she'd already spilled once watching Cole unload. "Figures some PTSD case would move in." Cole heard it all. He just didn't care. He'd heard worse on the tarmac in Kandahar. He wasn't looking to make friends. He just needed a roof and a place where Nova could sleep without flinching every time a truck backfired. The house stood alone at the edge of the river, an odd spiral structure of concrete, glass, and questions. From above, it looked like a snail's shell. From inside, it felt like walking inside a question no one had asked yet. The first night was uneventful. The second, Nova started pacing. On the third, just past midnight, she froze in the living room, tail low, ears up, her entire body taut like a bowstring. Cole, half asleep, reached for the flashlight. "You hear something, girl?" Nova didn't move. Then came the bark. Not the sharp, territorial kind. This was deeper, steadier. She turned, faced the far wall, the one under the staircase. It was smooth, pristine. Too pristine. She barked again, louder. She wasn't barking at an animal. She was alerting. Just like she used to when they swept bombed-out apartments for wires behind drywall. She was remembering something her body had been trained never to forget. Cole stood up slowly, flashlight beam skimming across the wall. The plaster was pale, perfect. No cracks, no wear. Every other wall in the house showed its age-peeling paint, nail scars, water lines. But this one? It looked like it had been installed last week. He pressed a knuckle to it and knocked. Hollow. Too hollow. He stared at it, then at Nova, who had now sat down but kept her eyes locked forward, not blinking, waiting. "I don't like this either," he muttered. From his tool bag in the hall closet, he pulled the small stud finder he hadn't used since Kabul. The meter lit up, then spiked in odd places. The internal structure was wrong, like the wall had two skeletons, not one. Nova stood and pressed her nose to the lower edge, let out a quiet, uneasy whine. Cole ran his fingers along the baseboard. The plaster felt colder than the air, and beneath it, the faintest seam, almost invisible unless you knew how to look. He grabbed a utility knife, scored a line just above the molding, carefully peeled back a flap the size of a dinner plate. Dust drifted down like ash. Behind it, darkness. He reached for the scope in his pack, the one he wasn't sure he'd ever use again outside of war zones, threaded the cable through the opening. The little LED lit up the cavity. Wires, sensors a cable running downward into the foundation. Microphones, fixed in an array, pointed inward. Cole blinked. Then again. He'd seen this before. Not in houses, in military labs, in field stations where terrain had to be monitored for seismic instability or... He remembered the phrase resonance capture. The spiral design. The geometry. It wasn't just strange architecture, it was deliberate. A structure built to listen. But who? And why? And more importantly, who had tried to shut it up? He pulled the scope out, backed away, mind buzzing. Nova nudged his leg with her head, firm and deliberate, as if to say, "Now do you believe me?" Cole stared at the wall again. His heartbeat slowed into that old familiar rhythm, the one that came before everything exploded. He didn't have answers. Not yet. But he had something better. A dog who refused to stay quiet, and a house that had just started talking. Cole sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, sweat clinging to his spine despite the draft crawling in from the broken kitchen vent. Nova lay beside him, silent but on edge, her eyes locked on the wall as though waiting for it to move. Every few minutes, her ears would twitch toward a sound only she could hear. He adjusted the scope cable again, pushing it deeper into the cavity behind the wall. The LED flickered as it passed by a tightly spaced array of wires. Then the beam caught something different, a brushed aluminum box, wired neatly into the stud framing, dust gathering in its corners like forgotten intention. Cole cursed under his breath, not because he was scared, but because this wasn't just weird architecture. This was design with a purpose. And whoever had hidden it hadn't expected someone like him to look. He widened the opening, pulling away another section of drywall with surgical patience. The moment the edge cracked, Nova flinched, not out of fear readiness. She stood and took a half step forward, her body forming a perfect line from neck to tail. Cole paused. "You smell something?" Nova didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed, alert, not anxious, calculating. Behind the second layer of wall, now fully exposed, sat a nested panel with an old control unit. Dust-caked, wires fraying, but intact. A small slot on the side still held a data logger, the kind used in seismology or hydrological surveys. He recognized the model instantly. Portable, high capacity. The same tech they'd used overseas to monitor underground tremors near suspected tunnels. He blew away the dust and clicked it loose. The screen didn't light up. No power. But the housing was solid. That meant someone had taken the battery out. Cole scanned the cavity again. Tucked behind the insulation, wrapped in black electrical tape, he found it. The battery was disconnected, not missing. He plugged it back in. The screen blinked, then booted. Lines of data scrolled in tight formation timestamps, readings, frequency signatures, pressure indexes. The entries ran clean for months. Then suddenly a blank. The feed had gone silent the night before last year's spring flood. The one they'd called minor, the one that rose just high enough to eat the edge of the community park, but didn't make headlines. That wasn't coincidence. Nova let out a low growl, soft and sustained. Cole kept reading. The logs weren't casual. They had been structured to track something specific. He scrolled through the archive, noting shifts in vibration, soil stress, water pressure readings from multiple depths. Not residential use. This was a monitoring station disguised as a house. And someone had shut it up on purpose. He leaned back against the cold wall, his mind flipping through everything he'd been told about the house when he bought it. The seller claimed the previous owner, a retired architect named Silas Clem, had drowned while kayaking. Freak current, they said. No foul play, no autopsy, cremated, case closed. But now that death didn't look accidental. It looked like the closing chapter of a story someone didn't want read. Cole opened the settings tab on the logger, hoping for a device ID or network reference. He got something better. User log. Resonance capture. Spiral Model 3. His pulse jumped. He'd read about early prototypes like this in declassified white papers, monitoring systems embedded into the geometry of a building, designed to read shifts in water table stress, capture seismic whispers before they roared. Experimental, unstable, and far too advanced for a man who just wanted a river view. Nova barked once, sharp and cutting. Cole turned. She stood stiff, facing the hallway, her ears pinned. Then the house creaked. Not from the wind, from below. Cole clicked the logger off and stowed it in his bag. "Let's go," he whispered. Nova moved first, padding silently down the hall, her head low, shoulders shifting like a panther. Cole followed, keeping one hand on the wall for balance. When they reached the basement door, Nova stopped. Cole heard it too. A faint hum. Not mechanical, not electrical, vibrational. The spiral itself was humming. He opened the door, flicked the switch. No light. He grabbed the flashlight from his belt and clicked it on. The beam caught concrete steps leading down into a crawl space. Dust clung to the walls like old breath. Nova hesitated, then descended without a sound. Halfway down, Cole stopped cold. A footprint. In the dust. Recent. The edges still crisp. Someone else had been here. He scanned the room. At the far end, past the old workbench, was a second wall panel newer than the rest. Plywood, sealed at the edges. No hinges. No handle. Nova approached it cautiously, nose to the seam. She didn't bark, she whined, a sound that carried weight, like grief. Cole stepped closer, heart pounding. He pressed his hand to the panel. Cool. Still. Then he heard it. A single beep, short, electronic. Faint. He stepped back, flashlight trembling just enough to betray what he was trying to ignore. There was a system still running behind this wall. Whatever it was, someone had tried to bury it. He looked down at Nova. She stared up at him. Not afraid, just waiting. Like she always had. In the dark, in the noise, in the places no one else wanted to go. This wasn't just a weird house, it was a silent witness, and Nova had just told him it was time to listen. The knock came just after noon, sharp and polite. Nova was already at the door before Cole even moved, her body stiff, tail high but not wagging. She didn't bark. Not yet. Just stood with the intensity of a soldier guarding a gate. Cole wiped the sweat from his hands onto the back of his jeans and opened the door. A woman stood there. Late 30s, tailored navy blazer over a crisp blouse, heels that looked better suited for courtrooms than muddy driveways. Her brown hair was tied back in a way that was meant to seem casual but wasn't. She held a leather folder tucked under one arm. "Mr. Travers?" she said, with a smile that had clearly been practiced in a mirror. "Madeline Voss. I represent a firm that works with properties in transitional flood zones. May I have a moment of your time?" Cole studied her eyes. Not what she said. The eyes always told the real story. Hers didn't blink quite enough. Nova stood between them, just inside the threshold, unmoving. Her presence wasn't threatening, but it was far from welcoming. Madeline tilted her head slightly. "Lovely dog. Belgian Malinois, right?" "She has good instincts," Cole replied flatly. He didn't invite her in. Madeline's smile didn't slip. She adjusted the folder and continued. "We're working with homeowners along the Millbridge River who might be interested in early buyouts. As I'm sure you're aware, with the recent flood warnings, the county is reviewing at-risk structures. Your house, while unique, falls into that category." Cole didn't say anything. He watched the way her eyes flicked past him, into the spiral interior, like she was trying to map the place without stepping inside. "We're prepared to offer a clean cash deal today," she continued, opening the folder with the ease of someone who had closed this pitch a dozen times. "No inspections, no strings, enough to get you into something safer. Something stable." Cole didn't look at the paperwork. "You offer everyone on the river cash, or just me?" She blinked. "Just once." "We're starting with high-risk homes." Cole's hand rested on the doorframe. Nova let out a low, almost inaudible growl, a hum of warning, not aggression. Madeline's eyes shifted toward the sound, but she didn't flinch. "I'm not selling," Cole said, "even if it means you might be forced to later." He raised an eyebrow. Madeline recovered quickly. "I only mean that sometimes, with government declarations, things move quickly. We've seen houses condemned overnight. Then I'll wait for the paperwork." Her smile thinned, professional courtesy straining at the edges. She closed the folder with a gentle snap and slid a business card from the side pocket. "If you change your mind," she said, placing it on the porch railing. It's best to act before the county does. She turned and walked to the silver sedan parked at the bottom of the gravel path. The car was clean. Too clean. Tires still dust-free, probably parked a block away and walked in. Cole waited until she pulled away, Nova watching until the car vanished around the bend. He picked up the card. It read, Voss and Wyatt Consulting. The logo was abstract waves meeting a roofline. The phone number was local. He flipped it over. Handwritten in neat cursive were the words, Don't let this house drag you down. Nova barked once, not at the card, at the road. Cole turned just in time to see a box truck rolling slowly past the house. Unmarked. No logos, just white panels and tinted windows. It stopped for 2 full seconds, then kept going. Cole's throat tightened. He pocketed the card and stepped back inside, locking the door behind him. Nova was already pacing, restless. She moved from window to window, sniffing the air, ears sharp. She stopped near the back wall, the same wall with the exposed cavity and sealed data logger. Saturday growled again. Cole dropped to one knee beside her and looked her in the eye. You're not just picking up scent, are you? He said quietly. She stared back, unmoving. That was the thing with Nova. She never acted out of boredom. When she stood like that, it meant something was coming, whether from a mile down the road or 2 feet behind the drywall. Cole opened his laptop, inserted the logger again. Still offline. The reading stopped just before the last flood. He clicked through the timestamps. One log was labeled differently. The last file, dated 12 hours before the flood surge, had a red tag. It read, Manual override triggered. Nova rose and walked to the front door again. This time she barked, loud, sharp, once. Cole followed her line of sight through the front window. The box truck was back, parked just across the street. No movement, engine off, just sitting there like it had nowhere else to be. Cole stepped back from the glass. He didn't reach for a weapon. Not yet. Instead, he closed the laptop, secured the data drive, and leaned into Nova's ear. Whatever they're after, he whispered, they don't know you've already found it. She looked up at him and wagged her tail once. Not in playfulness, in readiness. The first thing Cole noticed when he stepped back into the spiral house was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind, the kind that settles in after someone has left things where they shouldn't. The front door was shut, just as he'd left it. Windows still locked. Nothing broken. But something was off. He felt it in the air and in the hair that rose along the back of his neck. Nova? He called. No answer. He set his bag down slowly, scanning the room. Nova, come. Still nothing. That's when he heard it. A sharp scratch from behind the bathroom door, then a whine. Short, strained, clipped. He rushed over, twisted the handle. It didn't turn. He shoved hard. The door thudded against resistance. He slammed his shoulder into it, once, twice, and on the third hit, the pressure gave way with a wooden crack. Nova shot out, tail low, body tense, but uninjured. She circled him once, then moved toward the hallway, nose to the floor, nostrils flaring. They had locked her in. Whoever had been here knew what they were doing. Cole followed her into the living room. At first glance, nothing was taken. The TV was there, tools untouched. But when he looked at the shelf near the modem, his stomach dropped. The router was gone. The cables hung like torn veins. He pulled his laptop from his bag, heart thudding. The hidden data drive was still safe in the false bottom of the storage chest. He hadn't left that part to chance. Nova barked sharply and moved to the corner by the half-exposed wall. She pawed once, then looked back at him, ears up. Cole dropped to his knees and opened the cavity again. The wiring inside hadn't just been unplugged. The fiber optic cable connecting the house's internal sensor network had been severed clean through. No fray, no wear, cut, deliberate. and right at the node that fed into the data logger. He exhaled through his teeth. Someone had come in knowing what to look for and what to silence. Nova let out a low, angry growl. Cole followed her eyes to the small camera mounted near the ceiling, not visible to the casual glance. He'd installed it 2 nights ago after Madeline Voss's visit and the unmarked truck. He logged in, pulled up the internal backup. The feed loaded. At 2:37 a.m., movement. The front door opened without force. Whoever it was had a key or knew how to pick a lock fast. 3 figures entered. No masks. They moved with efficiency, like contractors, not looters. One headed straight for the router, unplugged it and bagged it. Another moved toward the wall panel. The third disappeared down the hall. That's when he saw it. They trapped Nova in the bathroom. She had lunged at one of them. She fought. He could see it in the way her body coiled before the door slammed shut. One of the men lingered by the exposed wall. His back blocked most of the angle, but when he shifted, the camera caught it. A logo on his jacket sleeve. Gold on black. Aurum Works. Cole froze the frame. His mouth went dry. The same company listed on the contracts tied to floodplain development, the same name tied to Councilman Langston's push for riverfront redevelopment. He clicked into another camera angle, an outdoor one, mounted beneath the eaves, facing the river. Playback from last week, 3:12 a.m., a barge, unlit, slipping through the current like a shadow. He zoomed in. At first it was just grainy shape, but the flare of infrared caught the outline of a dredging arm. Then, unmistakably, a fuel tote on deck. And there it was. The logo. Aurum Works. They were dredging without a permit. Cole skipped forward in the footage. The barge released load after load into a deep bend of the river, too close to the levee. He saw the pattern, the angle of the arm, the way the wakes slammed into the shoreline seconds after each haul, destabilizing, intentionally. Cole leaned back, heart pounding. The sensor system in the spiral had been tracking all of it, until the night it went dark. He pulled up the logger again, looked at the last complete entry. Timestamp 11:08 p.m. Flood warnings had gone out after midnight, but the sensor logs ended before the surge. He clicked on a buried metadata tag. Manual shutdown. Not power failure. Not overload. Someone had triggered the system off. Nova nudged his leg. She wasn't barking now, just watching him, breathing steady. He looked at her. "You knew," he said softly. Her tail gave one slow wag. She walked back to the open panel and sat, guarding it. Cole reached for the phone. Not to call anyone, not yet. He photographed the frames, the barge, the logo, the cable. Nova locked in the bathroom, the cut lines. He backed up the video 3 times, stored it on 3 drives. One he slipped into his boot, another into a hollowed flashlight. The third went around Nova's neck, under her collar, in a waterproof capsule from his old deployment days. If they came back, they'd find an empty shell. But the truth? The truth was already walking out the front door on 4 legs, and Cole planned to follow. The smear was faint, barely noticeable under the soft morning light filtering through the spiral skylight. But Cole had seen enough entry points and track marks to know when something didn't belong. He crouched in the foyer and pressed his thumb into the dried patch of dirt near the doorframe. It crumbled slightly at the edges, but the center held firm, caked and dense. Not from his boots, not from Nova's paws. Whoever had come through in the night had brought something with them. He scraped a sample into a small vial, sealed it, and labeled it with a piece of masking tape. Nothing fancy. Just a habit left over from years of field kits and evidence bags. Nova watched the whole time, sitting at a distance. Her ears flicked towards the window every so often, tracking some distant sound only she could hear. "Let's go see Eli," Cole said. Nova's tail wagged once. She knew that name. Eli Thompson wasn't just a former army buddy. He was a hydrologist now, teaching at a small technical college 2 towns over. The kind of guy who never got rid of his field gear and still knew how to read a floodplain like most people read a menu. They drove in silence, the gravel roads giving way to cracked blacktop. Nova rested her head on the armrest, eyes half shut but never asleep. Cole's mind kept replaying the infrared footage, the dredging, the cut cables. But it was the mud that nagged at him. It didn't just come from outside. It had a density to it, a weird cohesion. And it wasn't native to his riverbank. Eli met them outside the lab building, sleeves rolled up, safety glasses pushed to the top of his head. He looked like someone who'd just finished telling a room of sleepy students why water always wins. "You look worse than when we pulled you out of that minefield in Helmand," Eli said. "Fewer bullets." "More lawyers now," Cole muttered, handing over the vial. Eli took one look and frowned. "Where'd you pull this?" "My floor." After a break-in, Nova circled behind Eli and sat under the shade of a utility pipe, tongue lolling. Eli led them inside, past rows of microscopes and half-disassembled sonar rigs. He laid the sample onto a slide and loaded it under a scope. It took less than 30 seconds. "Damn," he muttered. "What?" "This isn't Millbridge sediment." "See the silicate distribution? And these particles here fluorescent dye markers." Cole leaned over. "You sure?" Eli adjusted the scope. "Positive. That dye compound is used by contractors in controlled dredging zones. It glows under UV and resists breakdown for weeks. The only site in this county that uses it is the upstream bend near the restricted channel. That's under federal flood management." Cole said. Eli nodded slowly. "And it should never be downstream, not unless someone moved it illegally. Or dumped it." Cole leaned back, the weight settling in again. "So someone trespasses, cuts my fiber line, steals my router, and leaves behind mud marked from a restricted dredge site?" Eli gave him a long look. "You always did attract the quiet kind of trouble." Outside, Nova let out a single bark. Sharp. Cole's eyes flicked to the window. A black SUV had pulled up across the street from the lab building. Tinted windows. No plates. Nova stood, body rigid. Cole stood too. "You expecting company?" Eli asked. "No." They watched as 2 men in safety vests got out. Both carried clipboards. Both looked too stiff to be actual inspectors. Eli said nothing, just quietly reached for his phone. "Let me guess," Cole muttered. "Public safety check?" The 2 men didn't approach the building. Instead, they took pictures of the license plates on nearby cars, then circled back toward their SUV. Nova was already waiting by the truck door when Cole stepped outside. Her head didn't turn. She just watched the men until they drove off. Back inside, Eli handed over a folder. Inside were printouts of the slide photos, a basic chemical analysis, and the dye trace ID. He'd even signed it at the bottom. "Consider that unofficial documentation. You want official? I'll need a lab chain of custody." Cole slid the folder into his pack. "I might need that chain sooner than I thought." He paused at the door. "Hey, if anyone else comes asking about me..." Eli cut him off. "I never saw you. But if they bring food, I might reconsider." Back in Millbridge, the spiral house sat unchanged, as if daring anyone to notice what lay beneath its strange curves. Nova stepped out of the truck and froze mid-stride. Cole followed her gaze. The same black SUV was parked 1 block down now. Different street. Same posture. Engine off. Waiting. He let Nova take the lead. She approached the porch slowly, sniffing every step. Then she veered toward the eastern side of the house, the side no one ever used. She stopped, ears up. Cole rounded the corner just in time to see a small plastic tab on the ground broken. Part of a wire clip. He followed the line back toward the house and saw it. Another cut. Smaller this time, at the base of the sensor feed into the soil. Not just silencing the system. They were disabling its ability to listen. Nova pressed her nose to the dirt and growled, deep in her chest. She wasn't warning him this time. She was hunting. And Cole had no intention of calling her off. The call came from an unlisted number. Cole almost didn't answer, but Nova had just lifted her head from the floor, ears pricked, like she sensed something on the other end before he did. "This is Cole." Silence. Then a voice, gravel-scratched and deliberate. "You're living in the Spiral House, that right?" "Who's asking?" "Name's Wendell Mars. I used to walk levees before they retired me early. Not by choice. I have something for you. Something Silas Clem left behind." The name dropped like a stone into still water. "Why me?" "Because you're still there." And because the dog knows how to listen. Cole glanced at Nova. She was already on her feet. They met the next morning at a roadside diner halfway between Millbridge and nothing. The kind of place with torn leather booths and coffee that tasted like it had been waiting all night for someone to believe in it. Wendell Mars was already seated when Cole arrived. Late 60s, square shoulders sagged from years in the field, eyes the pale blue of flood maps. He wore an old Corps jacket with the patches removed and hands that looked like they still belonged to work. Nova followed Cole in, sniffed once at Mars, then sat beside the booth. She didn't growl, didn't wag, just watched. "You brought her," Wendell said, not unkindly. "Good. She goes where I go." Wendell slid a small brass key across the table. It had a tag locker 17, Main Street Bus Depot. "Silas gave that to me 6 days before the river took him. Said if anything ever happened and someone else came to the house and didn't run screaming, this was for them." Cole turned the key in his fingers. It was warm from Mars' hand, heavy in a way that wasn't about weight. "I figured you'd show up sooner or later." Wendell continued. "That place, it doesn't choose people lightly. You think a house chooses someone? I think Silas built it to outlive him. But he didn't count on being silenced before it spoke." Cole pocketed the key and nodded toward the waitress. Coffee arrived, poured, barely touched. Wendell leaned in, voice low. "I filed 2 reports on faulty fill beneath the levee 3 years ago. Same bend, same contractor, the one Silas warned them about. Both reports vanished. My supervisor told me I was imagining numbers. Next thing I know, I'm offered early retirement and a confidentiality clause." "You signed it?" Wendell shook his head. "Didn't get the chance. Silas went missing before I could speak up. And after that, let's just say people stopped returning my calls." Nova shifted, ears flicking toward the door. Cole stood. "Thanks for the coffee." Wendell didn't follow him out. He just watched, as if handing over the key had removed the last piece of armor he was still carrying. They drove straight to the old bus station downtown. Cole parked at the far end of the lot, eyes sweeping for anyone who looked out of place. Nova hopped out without command and swept the area with her nose, then sat by the rear bumper. Clear. Inside, the place smelled like diesel and worn linoleum. An old locker wall stood like a row of forgotten tombstones. Number 17 was 3 from the bottom, near the corner. The key clicked on the first try. Inside, a single clear plastic tube, sealed with industrial tape. And beside it, a manila envelope with a notary seal across the flap. Cole slid the envelope into his jacket, held the tube in his hands for a long second. There were no markings, no labels, but he could feel the weight of truth inside it. Back at the Spiral House, he cut the seal with a pocket knife, laid the contents out on the table. Blueprints, density test results, stamped field reports, photographs of substandard concrete, pores riddled with air voids, and the signature, Silas Clem. The affidavit was typed in crisp, formal language, notarized and dated just 4 days before his death. It stated that Clem had witnessed illegal modifications to the flood control design specs performed under Councilman Langston's pet contractor, Orem Works. It also noted that his own monitoring design had recorded fluctuations in soil resonance consistent with destabilization from unauthorized dredging. Cole stared at the papers. Nova let out a soft whine, not from fear, but something else. A sound of recognition. "You knew him, didn't you?" Cole said. Nova lowered her head, pressed it gently to the edge of the table. Cole gathered the documents, sealed them in a new envelope, and labeled it by hand. "If something happens to me." He placed it in the chest beneath the floorboards, right next to the second backup drive. Then he sat with Nova in the spiral's central shaft, light cutting down from the glass dome overhead like a spotlight on a stage. For the first time, the house didn't feel strange. It felt ready, like a witness who had waited too long to speak. And Nova. She lay down without command, but never took her eyes off the door. It started with Nova refusing to leave the base of the stairs. Cole had just finished sealing the envelope of evidence from the bus locker when he noticed her. She wasn't barking or pacing, just standing still. Her nose hovered inches above the hardwood, tracking something invisible. She moved slowly along the edge of the first riser, stopped, then tapped once with her paw. He walked over, crouched beside her, and ran his hand along the grain of the stair. The plank looked normal, worn down in the center like every other tread in the house. But near the corner, his fingertip caught something a seam. Nova's ears tilted forward, her body humming with attention. Cole grabbed his multi-tool and wedged the blade between the seam. The board gave slightly, resisting at first, then popped up with a soft creak. Beneath it was a cavity no larger than a shoebox, wrapped in layers of insulation and aluminum foil, as if someone had taken extra care to protect what was hidden inside. He reached in carefully and pulled out a small recorder, the kind used in field audio documentation. Next to it was a micro SD card sealed in a clear pouch with a tiny strip of labeling tape. Final. Nova sat down next to him, tail sweeping once across the floor. Not celebration. More like closure. Cole brought the recorder and card upstairs. He didn't hesitate. He slid the card into his laptop, copied the contents, and opened the audio file. The screen showed a single track, just over 4 minutes long. He hit play. Silas Clem's voice came through the speakers, low and strained. "If you're hearing this," it began, "then I didn't make it off the river." A pause, a breath, then, "I didn't fall. I was pushed, not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically, hands on my back." Over the rail, the voice wavered, then steadied again. "I agreed to the project because I believed in the vision. Public-private cooperation, infrastructure modernization. Langston used words like resilience and integrity. I was naive." Cole stared at the screen, fingers still. "I built the spiral as a living instrument. A way to hear the land, to feel when the river changed its voice. And it did. On the nights they dredged too deep, you could hear the spiral hum. The house was talking another breath, shallower this time. When I refused to rewire the sensor outputs, Langston got quiet. That's when I started documenting everything. Soil samples, pressure variances, unauthorized excavation schedules. It's all logged a quiet thump in the background. The sound of a wave hitting metal. If this house lives past me, let it speak. Let it tell the story I wasn't allowed to finish. The recording ended in static. Cole sat back, letting the silence settle. Nova walked over and placed her chin gently on his boot. He nodded once. Time to let it speak. He pulled the data drives, the infrared footage, the GPS logs from the flood night. He stacked them into a stream rig he'd carried since deployment used once during a remote rescue op. A portable uplink with battery backups and a solar failover. He connected the logger, synced the resonance capture readings. On one screen, seismic graphs. On another, real-time water level feeds. On a third, the video of the barge dumping into the river channel. On the fourth, the voice of the architect, set to loop every hour. He titled the stream, "This house was built to tell the truth." He pushed it live. Viewers trickled in, then poured. Comments flew. "What is this? Is this real? Is this Millbridge?" He didn't answer. Instead, he moved through the house and powered on every sensor node he had access to. Green lights blinked one by one. The house hummed, not just with data, but with memory. Nova stayed beside the front door. It was nearly dusk when the knock came. A slow, measured thud. Cole opened the door to find a man in a tan utility jacket with a county seal stitched to the chest. Two others stood behind him with clipboards and rolled-up tape. "Mr. Travers, we're here to post a notice of violation and schedule an emergency assessment." Cole stepped aside just enough to let them see the monitors glowing behind him. "You might want to watch this first." They hesitated. Then Nova stepped forward, body loose but unmoving. Her eyes locked on the man with the tape roll. He froze. Cole didn't raise his voice. "There's a live stream going out to over 5,000 viewers, including 2 state agencies. That footage you're seeing? It shows a barge with Aurum Works logos dredging restricted bends upstream of a structurally compromised levee. It also has an affidavit from Silas Clem and a voice recording stating he was murdered." The first man's face drained of color. Behind them, a county vehicle pulled up. Another man got out. This one wore a suit. "I'm going to need you to step inside, Mr. Travers." Cole didn't move. Nova didn't either. "I won't be stepping anywhere," Cole said calmly. "But you're welcome to come in and see what a real listening post looks like." The official paused. The wind shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a siren began to rise. The river was talking again, and this time, someone was finally listening. The rain started as a whisper, a slow tapping on the skylight above Cole's head, like the river testing its voice. But within minutes, it thickened into a rhythm steady, unrelenting, drumming on the curved roof of the spiral house like a warning. Cole tightened the last cable into the backup rig. The entire system was now running off 2 deep-cycle batteries and a solar-fed UPS. The signal indicators blinked green. They were live. Not just streaming but broadcasting to every platform he could reach. Real-time data feeds, infrared camera loops, seismic readings, and the voice of Silas Clem, repeating every 30 minutes, recounting the truth no one had wanted to hear. Nova sat beside the main monitor, tail wrapped around her legs, ears pointed at the sound. Her gaze didn't leave the screens. Cole turned to her. "You ready for this, girl?" She didn't move. Outside, wind lashed against the house, bending trees at their roots. The Rook River had already breached the western footpath by dawn, and now, with the tide surging and levees vulnerable, the house that listened was about to speak louder than it ever had. Cole opened a live map feed on one of the monitors, GPS tagged from a set of custom drones flown by 3 friends from his old unit. Each of them was posted miles upriver, stationed on high ground, operating quadcopters outfitted with night vision and thermal cams. He watched the first feed roll in. A slow-moving barge. No running lights, no transponder ping. Another drone panned in from the left. A second barge. Dredge rig extended. The scoop arm was working pulling sediment and dumping it into the current, right along the restricted bend where the levee's undercut had begun. Then came the third feed. Nova growled low in her throat, not alarm, but acknowledgement. The third drone captured the operation from above. 3 vessels working in tandem, rain streaking across the lens. The reflection of the Aurum Works logo barely visible in the infrared contrast. But there. Cole tapped a hotkey. The video went full screen on the main broadcast. Thousands of viewers already online. Now tens of thousands. Comments scrolled faster than he could read. Is this live? What are they doing? That's my county. And then, the moment he had anticipated. His phone buzzed. It was Eli. You're trending across 3 state watch groups, Eli said, breathless. And someone just dragged a laptop into a hearing room. Which hearing? Langston's emergency flood safety review. They were about to vote on property seizures when someone yelled to stop the session and put you on the screen. Cole let out a slow breath. And? Judge called a recess. Told the clerk to verify the footage. 2 state investigators are already in the building. They saw the same barge patterns on their hydrological overlays last spring, but had no proof. Until now, Cole looked at Nova. She sat motionless, her body tense like a wire pulled tight. Not afraid, not tired, just listening, watching. On screen, the drones followed the barges as one of them tilted from the weight of a fresh dump. The displaced water surged toward the bank, hitting the lower toe of the levee. A pressure spike registered on the spiral's sensors seconds later. Cole switched to the live data graph. A red line climbed past warning level. His voice was calm but firm. The river just spoke. He typed it across the stream banner. Seconds later, the county's emergency management feed picked it up. He could see their automated alerts syncing with his own data. The algorithm they had ignored was now echoing his conclusions. Then another call came in. Unknown number. Cole answered. A clipped voice spoke. This is Director Salgado, State Flood Integrity Commission. We are watching your stream. We need the raw GPS logs, video footage, and the sensor metadata. Now, it's already being mirrored to your server. Cole said. You're listed as a backup recipient. Check the timestamp folder marked Spiral Live. He hung up. No time for pleasantries. On the screen, Drone 3 zoomed in as the crew aboard one of the barges noticed the camera. One of the men pointed up. They tried to wave it off, then scrambled below deck. Too late. The image had already gone viral. Cole updated the stream overlay. Added, captured by veterans, monitored by the spiral, verified by you. Nova shifted, head tilting towards the hallway. He followed her line of sight. Footsteps. Cole turned just in time as 2 uniformed officers appeared at the porch window. One knocked, slow and heavy. He opened the door. Mr. Travers, the taller one said. We're here to secure the premises. You're under state protection by emergency order. Your footage was admitted into court this morning. Behind them, a government vehicle idled in the rain. The officer held up a laminated badge. We're not here to take anything, he added. We're here to make sure no one else does. Nova stepped between Cole and the doorway, not blocking, standing beside. The officer looked down. She's intense. She's earned it, Cole said. Inside, the stream rolled on. A barge captain was now visible on Drone 2, arms raised as flood patrol boats approached from the west. The troopers boarded swiftly. The camera caught the moment a warrant was read. Cole leaned against the doorframe. They're going to try and spin this, he said to the officer. Let them try. The rivers already told the truth. In the living room, Nova laid down by the monitors, her ears still upright, her eyes unblinking. She looked like a sentinel. And for the first time in a long time, the house wasn't whispering anymore. It was roaring. The courtroom was supposed to be a formality. Councilman Reed Langston sat flanked by 2 attorneys, his suit immaculate, hands folded like nothing outside the windows mattered. He had just begun reading his pre-written statement when a bailiff interrupted, whispered something to the judge, and handed her a tablet. She paused, tapped the screen, and frowned. "This session is adjourned for 10 minutes," she said. Langston's attorneys leaned in, whispering questions. The judge didn't answer. She stepped into her chambers with the tablet in hand. Moments later, the courtroom projector flickered on. Cole's stream took the screen. The entire room went still. On the video, a barge caught mid-dump, soil cascading into the current. Another drone hovered above it, showing the levee's worn base eroding in real time. Next, the sensor graphs, time-stamped with water pressure spikes, side by side with footage from the spiral house's resonance system. Then came the audio. Silas Clem's voice, ragged and resolute. "I didn't fall. I was pushed." Langston's color drained. He stood up, but no one told him to. One of the attorneys reached for his arm, but too late. A hand touched his shoulder, uniformed, firm. Two state marshals stepped forward with warrants in hand. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit infrastructure sabotage, negligent homicide, and obstruction of a federal investigation." Langston sputtered. "This is political." "That man lives in a tin can. This isn't real." One of the marshals turned the tablet to face him. Cole's stream, still live, still counting viewers by the thousands. Langston's voice collapsed to a whisper. At the same moment, across town, troopers escorted Everett Munn, the Orem Works site supervisor, out of the company's downtown office. He was pale, silent, eyes fixed on the sidewalk like it could offer escape. Hours later, the police chief who had signed out Silas's missing engineering files submitted his resignation. No press conference, no apology. Just a folded envelope left on the mayor's desk and an empty office by the end of the day. The storm passed. Not just the weather, the storm of silence. It had taken weeks of planning, 2 years of whispering suspicion, and one house designed to remember what people chose to forget. Cole stood on the spiral's upper deck as the floodwaters began to recede from the tree line. Below him, crews with clipboards and survey gear moved carefully around the property, not to tear it down, but to integrate it. The state had classified the spiral house as a unique structural data node, the first of its kind. They called it the Travers Monitoring Site. But Cole didn't care about the name. He cared about what it had become. Inside, Nova lay beside the old console. Her ears twitched at every ping from the monitors, but she didn't rise. Not yet. She'd worked hard enough to earn a moment of stillness. Cole knelt next to her, scratched behind her ear. "You always knew," he said softly. "You knew this house wasn't broken." Just waiting, Nova turned her head, gave a slow blink, and laid it back down against her paws. They hadn't changed the interior much. The walls still held their strange angles, the spiral still curved upward into light. But now there were cables feeding to state servers, weatherproof rigs mounted near the foundation, a 3D seismic array embedded beneath the subfloor, and a plaque near the entrance, just outside the main beam of sun that lit the core of the house. It read, "The Spiral House, designed by Silas Clem, witnessed by Cole Travers, guarded by Nova." There was no ribbon cutting, no press event, just a quiet walkthrough with engineers and technicians, and one nod of approval from a woman who introduced herself as Deputy Director from the State Water Integrity Office. "We could use more systems like this," she said. Cole nodded. "Then start listening to the dogs." That got a smile. That night, as the town quieted, a few residents walked past the spiral house. Some slowed, others paused longer. A kid pointed at the strange, curved walls and asked his dad, "Why is it shaped like that?" The father stared at the house for a beat. "So it can hear the river better," he said. Inside, Cole sat with a hot mug of coffee and the hum of monitors around him. Nova shifted beside him, then rested her head in his lap. And for the first time in a long time, Cole felt the house wasn't holding weight. It was breathing. The silence had finally broken. and every whisper inside its walls had become a voice loud enough to shake the whole town. The last of the mud had dried. The drone cases were packed away. And for the first time in months, the spiral house exhaled into stillness. Cole stood in the field just beyond the ridge, looking back at what it had become. It was no longer just a house. The state had signed off on the proposal within weeks of the hearing. What had started as a solitary protest structure, mocked, ignored, and nearly demolished, was now the cornerstone of the Veteran Resilience and Disaster Response Institute. Funded in part by emergency infrastructure grants and a quiet donor who requested anonymity, the new center focused on training veterans in advanced disaster forecasting, crisis mapping, and tech-integrated response planning. And the house, the one Silas had built, the one that had once listened silently to the secrets buried in the soil, now listened actively, every day, for danger and for possibility. Nova stood beside Cole on the training lawn, her stance alert but relaxed. She wore no vest today, no leash, no command. And yet every veteran present that afternoon took their cues from her. They called her Sentinel, not as a nickname, as her title. On the morning of the center's opening, Cole had noticed something unusual. Every participant, former medics, engineers, Navy rivermen, and K-9 handlers, had naturally begun falling into rhythm around her. When Nova moved, conversations paused. When she stood at the observation deck, so did the others. It wasn't just reverence. It was recognition. She had heard what no one else had, and now she was teaching them how to do the same. At the dedication ceremony, a group of local school children passed out dog tags, not military ones, but playful ones, each etched with a single word. Listen. The brass plaque beside the entrance read, "The Spiral Institute, founded by Cole Travers, guided by Nova, first Sentinel." She didn't bark for attention. She barked for the truth. Cole didn't give a long speech. Just a quiet sentence into the mic. She saved more than just this house. She saved what we forgot how to hear. The crowd clapped. Some saluted. A few cried. That night, as a soft fog settled along the edge of the property, Nova lay by the large floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the river. Her paws twitched slightly in her sleep, chasing after something only she knew. Inside, Cole finished entering sensor diagnostics for the day. The system was holding strong. There had been a slight surge upstream from a levee shift, but the new alert grid triggered flawlessly. He closed the laptop, turned off the interior lights, and sat beside Nova, their silhouettes framed against the glass and the dark ribbon of water beyond. The river didn't speak tonight, but it didn't need to. The house was listening, and for once, the world was listening back. A week later, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address, just a signature, a D. Keller. Cole read it slowly. I spent years thinking Silas had built that place to prove a point. I see now it was built to keep a promise. Thank you for keeping it, and thank her for not giving up when the rest of us did. Cole folded the letter, tucked it into the journal where he'd scribbled his doubts all those months ago. He looked at Nova. You kept the promise. He whispered. Her tail thumped twice. Cole stepped outside, where a new group of trainees had arrived early. One of them, a quiet woman with a scar along her jawline, knelt to greet Nova with a nod. No need for words, she said. She already knows. And she did, because dogs like Nova don't need speeches or ceremonies. They don't serve for applause. They serve for something deeper, quieter, and infinitely more enduring. Truth. The kind that floods don't wash away. The kind that lives in the silence between barks. The kind that teaches a house not only to hear, but to speak. And now, to anyone listening. What's your story with a loyal pet? If Nova's journey moved you, help us honor more heroes like her, four-legged and two. Subscribe to German Shepherd Stories. Share your own. Because sometimes it takes a dog to remind us what it means to truly hear.